The battle between Kentucky's governor and lieutenant governor continues. We've been following the firing of Lieutenant Governor Jeanine Hampton's deputy chief of staff. Now Governor Matt Bevin's chief of staff is taking responsibility for that firing. Chelsea Jones is following the latest chapter of this ongoing dispute.
On Governor Matt Bevin's Twitter page, you see him and his Lieutenant Governor, Jeanine Hampton. Beneath are the words, "United we stand, divided we fall." But lately, staff members of the two have been at odds.
Because I chose to run with Senator Alvarado. Any other questions?
In January, Bevin announced Hampton would not be his running mate in his re-election bid for governor. About a week later, her chief of staff, Steve Nipper, was fired. And on May 30th, her deputy chief of staff, Adrian Southworth. Hampton took to Twitter wanting answers. Now Bevin's chief of staff, Blake Brickman, is speaking out. Yesterday, he told the Courier-Journal in a statement that he authorized the firing of Southworth. He said she was let go for a number of reasons, including misusing state property and advocating for the governor to commute the prison sentence of a man convicted of raping his own stepdaughter. He also stated Southworth lobbied state legislators to pass a law providing more leniency for convicted sex offenders who violate parole. But Southworth has dismissed these claims, calling them, quote, character assassination. Instead, she told the newspaper she was fired while investigating the dismissal of her own supervisor, Steve Nipper, Hampton's chief of staff. Southworth said she wanted to know who Governor Bevin had designated to fire Nipper. At the Capitol, Chelsea Jones, WKYT.
Hampton says she told the personnel cabinet that her aide will continue working in her office and expects back pay. The Floyd County coroner says a 12-year-old boy was killed when a vehicle struck his dirt bike. It happened yesterday on Kentucky 979 in the T-Berry community of Floyd County. The coroner says Dylan Mullins was pronounced dead at the scene. A cold case in Bell County leaves the family with questions even years later. It was 4 years ago today, David Allen Mason was found murdered about 50 yards away from his home. His body was found under an old mattress and some wood. His family continues to pray for answers and that justice will be served in the near future.
So much in our lives has just been just like held up. There's no going forwards. We want to, but we can't because we don't have we don't have answers.
If you have any tips or information about David Allen Mason's death, you can contact Kentucky State Police. One simple donation can go a long way. If you visit the Food City in Pikeville, you may have noticed a blessing buggy in the front of the store. Once the buggy is full, someone will take the items and distribute them through the county blessing boxes. But for a few days, the basket was missing after someone vandalized the helpful cart.
It is terrible to think that someone could do such a thing. But for all the things that happen that are bad, there's always the good people who come out on top.
Assistant store manager Tammy Schoolcraft says once employees found the torn up signs, they made a new cart designated for the blessing buggy. You can find it near the front of the store. Any non-perishable food items are welcome. A man is accused of trapping a Kentucky trooper's arm in his car window, dragging the officer through a Kroger parking lot and nearly crashing into other officers. 26-year-old Thomas Trumer Jr. was arrested Thursday in Louisville on charges including third-degree assault. The charges stem from a Tuesday clash between Trumer and the trooper. The trooper had an arm through Trumer's window when he rolled it up and drove off, dragging the trooper along with him. Kentucky's first Mr. Basketball and Floyd County legend Kelly Coleman has died this evening. The Herald Leader reports Waylon Coleman died at Norrin and Craig Wells Hospice Care Center in Hazard, and he was 80 years old. Coleman was named as the first Mr. Kentucky basketball player back in 1956. He set multiple records, with many still standing to this day. He's also known for leading Wayland to the state tournament back in 1956. Coleman was 80 years old. Tommy Poole will have more on him coming up later in sports.
Well, it was definitely a busy night here in the Weather Center. Severe thunderstorm watch still in effect for some counties, but it has allowed to expire for most of us. But it is still in effect for Martin, Pike, Floyd, Knott, Perry, and Letcher counties, as well as some of our West Virginia and Virginia counties. Now, this is until 3 a.m., but as those storms move through, this watch will likely be canceled. Now, your pinpoint Doppler is showing a lot of us are dry, but round 2 is on the way, especially for the northern portion of the viewing area. Let's go ahead and zoom in on a couple of those storms moving through Estill, Powell, and Menifee County right now. I know through Powell County, dime-sized hail was recorded with this storm passing through just now, so we could see some small hail and gusty winds, and definitely that heavy rainfall with these storms as they continue to push east. And definitely a lot cooler where the rain has already fallen into those upper 60s. Everyone else into those 70s, even lower 80s down into Middlesboro. So definitely quite the spread of temperatures. And those winds still cranking from the south. That's why we are so warm, especially into the Cumberland Valley region, 5 to 10 miles per hour. So for tonight, those storms are going to continue. They could be strong at times, but I don't think we'll see as many severe storms as we did the last few hours. Low temperatures getting into those upper 60s. Macy, I'll break down the rest of those rain chances in just a little bit.
All right, thank you, Kelly. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he's reaching out to American allies in the wake of what Washington says were Iranian attacks Thursday on 2 commercial oil tankers near the Strait of Hormuz. On CBS's Face the Nation, Pompeo said a U.S. military deployment remained among the options that could be considered to ensure safe oil transport in the Middle East. Pompeo says President Trump has made clear he does not want to go to war with Iran, but says we'll always have the authorization to defend American interest. CBS's News' Meg Oliver has more on the reaction to the tanker attacks.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he's reaching out to U.S. allies after attacks on 2 oil tankers near the Strait of Hormuz.
We are going to work to build out a set of countries that have deep vested interest in keeping that strait open to help us do that.
Pompeo says he's confident the U.S. can take unspecified actions to restore deterrence against Iran, which the U.S. blames for the explosions.
You say a full range of options. Does that include a military response?
Of course. Of course, the president will consider everything we need to do.
Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton says a retaliatory military strike is warranted.
The fastest way to get the fire and fury of the U.S. military unleashed on you is to interfere with the freedom of navigation on the open seas and in the air. That's exactly what Iran is doing in one of the world's most important strategic choke points.
House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff cites the Trump administration's move last year to quit the Iran nuclear deal and impose economic sanctions.
The whole idea that somehow through this pressure campaign, we were going to force Iran to capitulate and say, okay, we'll come back to the table, we'll give up everything, was naive, dangerously naive in the first place. And this is what our allies are reacting to.
Democratic presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg urged U.S. officials to defuse the situation.
This is not inconsistent with Iranian behavior that has been aggressive and often malignant in the region. The real question is, what can we do, given the facts on the ground, to ensure a measured response that will de-escalate rather than inflame tensions in the region?
The U.S. has been speeding up deployment of the USS Abraham Lincoln Aircraft Carrier Strike Group, and it's bolstering missile defenses in the area. Meg Oliver, CBS News, New York.
According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, 16% of U.S. petroleum products come from Persian Gulf countries last year, while many Asian nations rely much more heavily on oil from the region. Churchgoers remember 9 members of their church Sunday shot to death 4 years ago in Charleston, South Carolina. Monday marks the 4-year anniversary of the massacre that set off another national debate about gun violence. On Wednesday, June 17, 2015, white supremacist Dylan Roof walked into a prayer service at the historical Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, and opened fire, one of the deadliest attacks on a place of worship in the United States. A woman in Florida is accused of trying to crush a nest of sea turtles. Police say they, along with other bystanders, saw the woman go into an area designated as a sea turtle nest on Miami Beach. Officers say she then took one of the stakes used to mark the nest and began jabbing at the eggs. Officers from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission were called in and determined that none of the eggs had been damaged. We're learning more about an officer who was shot while driving with a prisoner. A police officer in Missouri was shot during a struggle while transporting that prisoner. Police say the prisoner shot the officer in the stomach on Friday afternoon. And that officer was life-flighted to a hospital in Kansas City where she remains in stable condition. The prisoner had a long criminal history, including assault and resisting arrest charges. One person is dead and another injured after a small plane crash in Huntsville, Texas. Officials say the plane made a short trip from Conroe to Livingston Friday, and it was on its way back to Conroe when the plane went down in a wooded area. The pilot was removed from the wreckage Saturday and transported to the hospital. A woman who was a passenger was reported dead at the scene. New developments this weekend in an alleged shoplifting incident involving police officers accused of misconduct. The Phoenix, Arizona Police Department now says those two officers have been placed on desk duty. And as Rick Damalja reports, this all comes after new video has come to light.
Tense encounter as Phoenix police respond to a report of shoplifting. Cell phone video shows what happened last month after police stopped a couple along with their two daughters outside an apartment complex.
We parked into the complex, dropping our daughter off to the babysitter. Next thing you know, a police officer, or we didn't know who he was, random guy comes up to the car, opened the door, banging on the window with a gun.
One officer is shown kicking the father's legs and yelling profanity, while another officer is seen pointing a gun at the mother, and a different officer tried to yank her one-year-old girl from her arms. All of this stemming from accusations that the couple's older daughter stole a doll from a Family Dollar store. Shortly after the incident, the parents were released. Neither were charged with any crimes. The couple has now filed a $10 million lawsuit against the city, alleging police misconduct.
If that's the way you typically stop people of color or anybody in this city, you are asking for problems in the streets of this city.
The police department says it is taking the allegations seriously and is investigating. The officers involved have been placed on desk duty.
I, like you, am disturbed by the language and the actions of our officer.
The city's mayor apologized to the family in a Facebook post Saturday, writing, "There is no situation in which this behavior is ever close to acceptable." I'm Rick Damagella reporting.
Phoenix police say the father admitted to stealing another item, but also acknowledging that the officer's behavior is unacceptable. A Tennessee man loses both his legs while serving overseas and now has a home that's been modified to fit his specific needs, free of charge. You could call it a homecoming of his dreams. After losing both of his legs serving in Afghanistan during an IED blast, Marine Lance Corporal John Kurtrin struggled to get around.
I live as a multi-level home. There's steps in and out of the house. There's thresholds throughout the door, in every doorway. My wheelchair doesn't fit through some doorways.
Featuring 40 special adaptions, this brand new home was fully built just for him, all thanks to Homes for Our Troops. And some happy news on this Father's Day. A father and son in Oregon have something in common this year. They both went to college and are graduating from Portland State University. The two say they're proud to be getting degrees alongside each other. And still to come on Mountain News Weekend Edition, more than 246,000 pounds of breakfast wraps are recalled. We'll have those details next.
It was certainly a stormy Father's Day, and more storms are on the way for some. I'll continue to track those in my full forecast coming up.